Disclaimer: this content is only for mature audiences. Viewer discretion is advised. He didn't knock. He didn't say a word. He just sat there right on the edge of my bed, eyes down, lips tight, his hands resting awkwardly on his thighs. The silence between us felt heavier than the walls, like it had been waiting all day to spill over. I was still half under the blanket, the dim light from the hallway barely touching his face, but even in the shadows, I could tell something was building inside him. And I didn't know what to say. We'd never been close, not really. My stepson and I kept things polite, distant. He was 22 now, grown, quiet, thoughtful. Moved back in a few weeks ago after his breakup, said he needed time to reset. I gave him space. But tonight felt different. The kind of quiet that wasn't just about not speaking, it was thick with something unspoken. Something hanging just beneath the surface. I asked if he was okay. He didn't answer. Just glanced at me for a second, then looked away. And that one look said too much. Vulnerability. Hesitation. Maybe even something else. I shifted in bed, suddenly more awake, more alert. The air between us changed, charged in a way I couldn't name, but felt deep in my chest. This wasn't about chores, or a favor, or some casual late-night talk. He needed to be here. With me. There had always been something unusual in the way he looked at me sometimes. Not inappropriate, not exactly. Just searching, as if he was waiting for a sign he hadn't gotten yet. And I hadn't asked questions. Maybe I didn't want to know. But now, here we were, no distractions, no interruptions, no buffer. Just the two of us. The silence stretched on, daring me to break it. But something held me back. Not fear. Curiosity, maybe. A sense that whatever this moment was, it wasn't just a mistake. It had meaning. He finally took a breath, as if he was going to say something, but then stopped. The room was warm, but I felt a chill crawl across my skin. My heart beat a little faster, not because I was scared, but because I realized I was waiting too. For what? I didn't know yet. But I knew this wasn't the end of the night. It was the beginning of something neither of us had planned for. And, just like that, without a word, he stood up again. Paused at the door. Looked back. Then he left. But the space he left behind in that room felt fuller than before, like something had shifted between us, just enough to pull everything off balance. And I knew, the next time he walked into this room, it wouldn't be the same. The door clicked shut behind him, and I just sat there, heart still racing. I stared at the empty space where he'd been, trying to make sense of what had just happened. That moment, it wasn't random. He'd come into my room for a reason. But why? And why now? I didn't sleep much that night. My thoughts kept circling back to him, his silence, the way he looked at me, the way he hesitated like he wanted to say something but couldn't. It wasn't like him to be so unsure. He'd always been private, sure, but also grounded, thoughtful. Ever since I married his father 6 years ago, we'd had a quiet, respectful dynamic. He kept to himself, I stayed in my lane. His dad worked long hours, and over time, the two of us ended up spending more time together than expected, sharing dinners, watching shows, small conversations in the kitchen. But never anything more. When his dad passed suddenly last year, everything shifted. Grief turned the house into a quiet shell. We were two people under one roof, each trying to figure out our own way through the loss. Some days we barely spoke. Other days, we'd share little pieces of ourselves, moments that felt too small to matter, until now. I remember one night a few months ago, long after the funeral, when we stayed up late watching a movie. Halfway through, I noticed he was watching me more than the screen. I didn't say anything, just let it go. I thought maybe he missed his dad, and being near me gave him some sense of normalcy. But now, thinking back, maybe there was more to it. Since he moved back in, things had been different again. He seemed quieter than usual, more tense. I'd catch him glancing at me when he thought I wasn't looking. He never crossed any lines, never said anything inappropriate, but there was an energy. Something unspoken but real. I told myself I was imagining it. That I was just lonely, reading into things. But last night proved I wasn't the only one feeling it. That morning, I found him in the kitchen making coffee. He barely looked up when I walked in. The air between us still felt thick, but neither of us said a word about the night before. I wanted to ask why he came in, what he wanted to say, but I didn't. I just poured my coffee and sat across from him in silence. He finally broke it. I couldn't sleep. Yeah, I said, meeting his eyes. Me neither. We left it at that. But the way he looked at me, it wasn't confusion anymore. It was knowing. Something had shifted, and we were both aware of it now. And as much as I tried to act normal, something inside me was unraveling too. I didn't know where this was going, but I knew we were already on the edge of something we couldn't take back. The days that followed weren't loud. They were quiet in a way that made everything feel louder inside my head. He didn't bring it up, and I didn't push. But things had shifted, and we both knew it. The air between us now had this constant low hum, like we were waiting for something to happen, but neither of us wanted to be the one to start it. He started spending more time at home. Longer hours in the living room, lingering in the kitchen when I was around, brushing past me with that slight pause in his step. It was subtle. Always subtle. But not innocent. He'd ask me questions he didn't need answers to. He'd hover a little too long when I was cooking. And I'd feel it, his presence behind me, his silence saying more than any words. One night, I caught myself standing in front of the mirror before dinner, adjusting my blouse like I was getting ready for something more than a quiet meal at home. That scared me, because it wasn't something I did before. Not for him. Not like that. But he noticed. I saw it in his eyes that evening when I brought the food to the table. His gaze lingered just a second too long, his voice a little softer than usual. He helped me clean up afterward without being asked. While drying a glass, he finally said, "You look different lately." I froze for a second. Different how? He shrugged. I don't know. Just softer, calmer. I didn't respond. I didn't trust myself to. Later that night, I sat in bed scrolling through my phone, trying to distract myself. I couldn't shake the feeling that everything was slowly closing in, like we were both being pulled towards something neither of us had named. That tension wasn't just between us anymore. It was inside me, creeping into my thoughts when I wasn't watching. What made it worse was the way others were starting to notice him around more. My sister stopped by that weekend and raised an eyebrow when she saw him helping me fix the garden hose. "He's really stepped up since moving back in," she said. Almost like a partner. I laughed it off, but my stomach tightened. Because that word, partner, sat wrong in my chest. Not because it was untrue, but because it was too close to something I couldn't let myself admit. That night, I heard footsteps outside my room again. They stopped at my door but didn't come in. I waited, heart pounding. Then, nothing. Just the sound of him walking back down the hall to his room. It was like we were both standing on the edge of something that neither of us could name, pretending not to look down. It was getting harder to pretend. The little moments we shared, passing glances, quiet touches that seemed accidental, but never quite were, had started to carry weight. They stuck with me long after he left the room. And I could feel it in him too, the way he looked at me like he was searching for something. Like maybe he already knew what he wanted but wasn't sure if he should ask for it. That week, the weather turned cold. We stayed inside more, wrapped in quiet routines that didn't feel so routine anymore. He started helping with dinner every night, always finding excuses to be close. If I reached for something, his hand was already there. If I moved past him, he lingered just enough that I had to brush against him. And neither of us said anything. One night, after another silent meal, we ended up in the living room. The TV was on, but we weren't watching. He was sitting just close enough on the couch that I could feel the warmth from his arm. The room felt too quiet, like it was holding its breath. I couldn't focus on the screen. I could feel his eyes on me. "I've been thinking about that night," he said suddenly. I didn't need to ask which night. I felt my pulse quicken. What about it? He hesitated, leaning forward with his elbows on his knees. I shouldn't have come in like that. I didn't know how else to say what I was feeling. I turned toward him slowly. And what were you feeling? He looked at me then, really looked at me. Confused. Lonely. But also, drawn to you in a way I didn't expect. The air shifted. Everything else, the house, the TV, the noise outside, disappeared. It was just the two of us, locked in that moment. I didn't speak. I couldn't. My heart was beating too loud in my ears. He stood up, pacing a little, running his hand through his hair. I know how this looks. I know what people would say. But I'm not a kid. And this isn't just some crush. I felt like the floor under me had disappeared. Everything he was saying, I'd already thought. I just never believed he'd say it out loud. And now that he had, there was no going back. I don't want to make you uncomfortable, he said, voice softer now. But I can't keep pretending like nothing's going on between us. I stood up too, not sure why. Maybe to feel more grounded. Maybe because I didn't want him to feel alone in the moment. Our eyes met again, and it felt like everything had been building to this. He stepped closer. I didn't move. But I also didn't speak. And in that final second before anything else could happen, before either of us crossed whatever line had been drawn in silence for weeks, I heard the front door open. We froze. Both of us. The sound of the front door creaking open sliced through the tension like a blade. I stepped back instinctively, my hand brushing the edge of the couch as I steadied myself. His expression shifted fast, from open and vulnerable to guarded and unreadable. He backed away too, eyes flicking toward the hallway. Footsteps. Slow, steady, unfamiliar. I looked at him, confused. Did you invite someone over? He shook his head, barely whispering, no, my mind raced. It was late. Too late for a visitor. And no one had called or texted. Whoever it was wasn't expected. I moved toward the hallway, every part of me alert. He stayed close behind, his presence at my back a reminder of the moment we'd just been in, but now wasn't the time. When I turned the corner, I stopped cold. Standing in the foyer was a woman. Mid-30s. Blonde. Wearing a coat that looked expensive but weather-worn. She turned when she heard us. And I recognized her instantly, his ex. The one he never talked about. The one he said had left him broken. Hi, she said, like this was normal. Sorry for showing up like this. I needed to see you. She was looking at him, but her eyes flicked to me. Not judgmental, but curious. Like she'd walked into something she couldn't quite place yet. He stiffened. How did you know where I was? I didn't, she said quietly. I guessed. I remembered your stepmom's house from a photo. He didn't say anything. Neither did I. I've been doing some thinking, she continued. About us. About everything. I was stupid to leave the way I did. But I've changed. And I wanted to tell you that in person. The silence that followed was thick. I could feel my chest tighten as I looked between the two of them. He looked stunned. Angry. But also unsure. He finally spoke. You can't just show up here. I know, she said. But I had to try. You matter to me. The words hit like a low thud in my stomach. I wasn't sure why. Maybe because just minutes ago, everything between us had been unraveling into something real. And now she was here, dragging the past back into our space. I stepped aside, suddenly feeling like I was in a room I didn't belong in. She noticed. I'm sorry, she said to me. I didn't mean to interrupt anything. I forced a smile that didn't reach my eyes. It's fine. But it wasn't. Nothing was. He was quiet again, but I could see the tension in his jaw, in the way his fingers curled slightly at his sides. Something was happening inside him, and I didn't know which way it would go. The past had just walked through the front door. And it wasn't leaving quietly. The silence dragged. He looked like he was holding back 1,000 things, and I wasn't sure if he was about to shout, cry, or walk out. His ex stood still, watching him carefully, like she was waiting for permission to say more. And I stood off to the side, heart pounding, pretending not to feel the weight of everything crashing down at once. Then he finally spoke. "You don't get to do this," he said, voice low but steady. "You don't get to disappear, break me apart, and then just show up like nothing happened." She looked taken aback but didn't back down. "I know I hurt you. I was scared. But I've been trying to fix myself and I realized. I left the only real thing I ever had." He laughed, bitter, dry. "You didn't just leave me. You knew I was broken, and you walked away." "I know," she said, softer now. "But maybe we can start over." His eyes shifted toward me. And that was the moment everything cracked open. Because he didn't look at her like someone seeing a second chance. He looked at me like he was seeing the truth, maybe for the first time. "No," he said, turning back to her. "I can't go back. I'm not the same person you left." She glanced at me again, realization slowly dawning. "Is that what this is?" she asked, voice sharp now. "You and her." The words landed like a slap. I opened my mouth to speak, but he cut in first. "It's not what you think," he said. "But yeah, I care about her. More than I probably should." I felt frozen. Everything we'd left unspoken was suddenly out in the open, no way to tuck it back into silence. His ex's face twisted in a way I couldn't read, half disbelief, half something else. Then she just nodded. "I guess I really did lose you." She didn't wait for a response. She turned and walked out, leaving the door slightly open behind her. The cold air slipped in like a warning. He didn't move for a long time. I finally said, "You didn't have to say that." He looked at me, eyes clear but tired. "Yeah, I did." And then, just when it felt like the room might finally settle, there was a knock at the door. Slow. Heavy. Not her. He walked over and opened it, just a crack. A man stood there. Mid-40s. Confident. Calm. "I'm looking for my wife," the man said, eyes landing on me. My blood ran cold. The room spun. My breath caught. Because I was a widow. And I had no idea who this man was. The man's voice still echoed in the doorway. "I'm looking for my wife." I couldn't move. I couldn't speak. My stepson looked at me, confused. The man at the door didn't look like he was confused at all. He looked like he knew exactly what he'd come for. "I think you've got the wrong house," I finally managed, though my voice didn't sound like mine. He smiled, just a little. "No. I'm exactly where I need to be." My stepson stepped between us, protective without saying a word. "Who are you?" The man ignored him. "I know you've been told I'm dead. I've let that story carry for a while. But I didn't die in that crash. I left. Walked away. And now I'm here to finish what I should have faced years ago." My breath caught in my throat. The accident. The funeral. The grief I carried like armor. None of it had prepared me for this. I stared at him, older, yes, changed, but unmistakably him. My husband. Or the man I thought I buried. I stepped forward. "Why now?" He looked at me with something between regret and determination. "Because I finally had the guts to come back. And because I heard what was happening here." That's when it clicked. Someone told him. Someone close. My eyes went to the doorway, empty now. His ex. She hadn't just shown up randomly. She had known. He stepped inside slowly, eyes scanning the space like a stranger. My stepson looked like he was ready to throw him back out. But I held up my hand. "No. We need to talk. Alone." My stepson didn't like it, but he nodded. "I'll be upstairs." As he walked past, our eyes met. Everything between us, the looks, the tension, the almost, hung in the air like a shadow that wouldn't leave. And I knew in that moment, things had changed forever. Not just because someone had come back from the past, but because of everything that had happened in his absence. The talk with my husband, if I could even still call him that, was long. Painful. He'd faked his death. Disappeared. And now wanted to reclaim a life that had moved on without him. I didn't make promises. I didn't offer forgiveness. I just told him the truth. I wasn't the same woman he left behind. When he finally left, the sun was starting to rise. The house felt still again. I found my stepson in the hallway. He didn't ask what happened. He just said, "Are you okay?" I nodded, barely. Getting there. He looked at me for a long time. Then just whispered, "I'm still here." And that was enough. For now. Sometimes, the ending isn't a perfect wrap-up. Sometimes it's a quiet moment after the storm. A breath. A pause. A choice. If this story got you thinking, I'd love to know how you feel about the ending. Would you want to see what happens next? Drop a comment and let me know your thoughts. And if you felt the tension, the emotion, or the twist hit you hard, hit that like button, subscribe, and stay tuned for more stories like this.